Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Patty Blum from Compliance Poster Company.
Good morning, Patty. How are you?
Good morning.
Good morning.
We're going to get started in a few minutes. In about 2 or 3 minutes, I'll start the presentation and do some introductions, and then we'll go from there.
Sounds good.
That's it, aren't they? No. Andrew did the shirt. So we've known for this. Yeah, we've known for about a week. We're motivated.
Okay, everyone. I guess we can go ahead and get started. Good morning to everyone that's on the West Coast, and good afternoon. And good afternoon to everyone that's on the East Coast. My name is Cody Farzad. For those of you that don't know me, I am the manager of Employers Choice Online, a division of Diversified Risk Management, and I'm glad that all of you can join us. I see that we have a very, very good turnout this morning, which is fantastic. I'm glad you guys have taken the time out to listen to what we have to say today. And what the presentation is about today is employment background investigations, myths versus facts. And I just want to make sure that all of you can see our screen. And I'm sorry? Can everyone hear us? Can everyone hear me and see our screen?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. I'm sorry?
I don't see the screen.
Okay, were you able to get into the GoToMeeting and it ran the program for you?
No, I actually came in through the dial-in.
Okay.
So I assume I'm not going to get that advantage.
Okay, you have to click on the link that we sent to you in your email, and
I'll bring it up.
And it will ask you if you don't already have GoToMeeting on your computer. It will ask you if you would like to download the program, and you would say yes. And then a box will pop up that says Run, and you would click on the button that says Run, and then you'll be able to see the presentation.
Okay, thanks, Michelle.
Uh-huh.
And we'll also be hosting this presentation and previous presentations that we've done on our website in about a week or two. This one will be uploaded to our website, and currently we have a webinar that had to do with the top 10 mistakes employees or employers make when doing background checks that I had hosted back in March. So if you want to see this presentation again, if you want to share it with any of your colleagues or peers, it'll appear on our website in about a week or two. Also, again, if you're having any technical problems, give us a call. Give me a call, and I can help you work through the issue at 800-424-7011. And also, with regards to questions and answers, we'll leave about 15-20 minutes at the end of the presentation for questions and answers. So you can either email them to me or Michelle, or you could utilize the chat box that you have in the upper right-hand corner of your screen, and you could type your question in.
I'm on a webinar. Okay, we're still here. Just a moment. Thanks. So today we're going to obviously talk about some myths and facts regarding background checks, and as well as best practices. The Fair Credit Reporting Act, commonly known as the FCRA, is a consumer protection law. It enables consumers to learn what information credit reporting agencies have about them on file and gives them the opportunity to dispute the inaccurate information.
I want to introduce our speaker this morning, or afternoon, depending on what time zone you're in. Michelle Cordova, appointed to Employers Choice Online, again, a division of Diversified Risk Management, as director for the past 7 years. Michelle has been responsible for educating new and prospective clients on all aspects of employment screening, from federal and state laws to best practices in our industry. Michelle also serves as an in-house expert on the Fair Credit Reporting Act, as well as state and federal guidelines that regulate what CRAs or consumer reporting agencies can report. And without further delay, Michelle, would you like to take over?
I sure would, Cody. Thank you very much for the introduction. Good morning, everyone. I want to thank you for taking time to be with us today. Just again, want to make sure everybody can see our presentation. If you cannot see it and you've already gone through the GoToMeeting process where you've clicked on the link to download and run the program, give us a call. Cody can step out and help you with that. Can you forward it? Thanks. So today we're going to obviously talk about some myths and facts regarding background checks and as well as best practices. The Fair Credit Reporting Act, commonly known as the FCRA, is a consumer protection law. It enables consumers to learn what information credit reporting agencies have about them on file and gives them the opportunity to dispute the inaccurate information. We'll also talk about the Americans with Disabilities Act. It was actually a federal law created in 1990. It forbids discriminating against people that are disabled. Basically, workers' compensation searches would be a good example. You are allowed to do workers' compensation searches as part of your background screening checks. However, you may not use the results of a workers' compensation search solely in making your employment decision. That would be considered discrimination. And Cody, you want to talk about how you would have to?
Yeah, so you want to make sure that if you're running a workers' comp search that you have a signed release. It's a separate signed release from the employee, because again, it's going to be a post offer search. They need to have already been offered employment before you could run a workers' comp search. So they sign a release depending obviously on the state, and that's where you do search for the workers' comp, is through the state level. And we also require our clients to sign a certification stating that, to the effect that you are running this search after an offer of employment has been made. And then also results too from a workers' comp search. If an employee has any limitations, you have to do as much as you can reasonably to accommodate the limitations that they do have. So workers' comp is a it's a useful search, especially in certain industries that have extensive manual labor, on your feet factory type work, construction work. It's very good to do that workers' comp search, but there are strict laws stating that, again, it has to be post-offer, and even if you do get results, you have to work within reasonable limitations that the employee has. So it is a service that we provide, but again, you have to make sure that you certify that they've been offered employment.
So here are some common myths, obviously, regarding employment screening. People think background checks are too expensive, and actually an entry-level background check, which we would consider a sufficient background check, which would consist of a Social Security address trace, a driving history, and a county-level criminal history hand search for felony and misdemeanor records, is basically less than about $30. And I don't think that's too much to pay for peace of mind, especially when you're considering what you would have to pay if you hired someone with a criminal history that you didn't know about. Also, it's well documented that at least 2 out of every 5 applications contain at least one major fabrication. So basically what an employer doesn't know can and certainly will have a tremendous impact on their company if they're not aware of these issues. And background checks are not the same. A proper criminal check is called a hand search in real time, and it basically means that we run a trace on their Social Security number, determine what counties they've lived in and worked in the longest in the last 7 years, and we send a researcher, or the background screening company you use sends a researcher to the court using the subject's name and date of birth in order to look for felony and misdemeanor records. Now, Cody, why did I mention searching where somebody also works?
Well, when we do, and the only reason we do a Social Security trace is just to determine which counties they've lived in. Now, it won't capture any counties that they've worked in. And, of course, you know, nothing's going to stop someone from living in, let's say, San Bernardino County and working in Riverside County. So you do a county-level search in San Bernardino, and it comes back clear. However, keep in mind that they spend, you know, between 8 and 10 hours of their day in a different county. So only you will know where they've worked, where they've lived. So you just want to analyze where they've lived as well as where they worked and search in each of those counties.
On their employment application, when they list their current and previous employers.
Right, so you see a resume or an application and you see what they could do. Also, I wanted to make mention to number 3 on this slide, background checks are all the same. I failed to mention that I'm going to be hosting a webinar in October having to do with drafting background screening policies, putting it on paper, and it's going to be a very, very informative webinar. And this just speaks to this fact that you don't want to run the same searches on every single employee in your organization. You want to have a policy in place that states these searches get ran for this person and so on and so forth. So we'll be sending emails for that in October on drafting background screening policies.
Another myth is, oh, anybody can do a background check. And really, you need to hire a capable, honest consumer reporting agency to perform your pre-employment investigations. And, I mean, background screening companies are in the business of handling sensitive consumer information, and you are relying on that information to make a potentially litigious hiring decision. Therefore, in light of the increase of identity theft for your protection and as part of your provider selection process, we strongly encourage you to only hire employment screening companies that are insured and state licensed as a private investigation company for your background screening needs. If you hire a background screening company and they're searching criminal records for you, you better make darn sure that they have PI licenses in the required states in order to search for those criminal records.
In New Jersey, so basically if your background screening company is using a vendor or is dealing directly with the court runners in certain counties, those court runners, for example, in the state of New Jersey, have to be licensed in the state of New Jersey to pull public records. If they don't, they are violating the law. Mm-hmm. So you want to make sure that the vendor you're using or the court runner you're using is licensed in the respective state that they're serving, because it's a huge fine and it's violating the law. And more states are coming out with statutes like this, stating that you have to make sure that you are licensed to pull any kind of public record, criminal record, civil record, anything like that.
Also, another myth that you don't need to drug test your employees unless there was an accident or you had reasonable suspicion. Drug testing is equally important in the screening process, but unlike the background check, may not be conducted unless an offer of employment has been made. So you can't just have somebody come in and complete an employment application, sign a release for a background check, hand them the necessary FCRA forms and state forms, and send them off for a drug test, and just decide not to hire them later. Actually, a formal offer of employment does have to be made. And you can't rely on the information your applicants put on their employment application because, as I previously said, about half of the applications submitted to employers do contain at least one major fabrication. And Cody and I see it all the time.
And a lot of what we see are education, obviously, falsifying their education, their experience. because they feel, again, companies are just going to be doing a standard criminal background check. They're not going to be looking into my degree that I'm claiming or employment or anything else. So make sure that, that you're just running different searches for more high-level employees.
Another myth is, oh, anybody can do a background check. And really, you need to hire a capable, honest consumer reporting agency to perform your pre-employment investigations. And, I mean, background screening companies are in the business of handling sensitive consumer information, and you are relying on that information to make a potentially litigious hiring decision. Therefore, in light of the increase of identity theft for your protection and as part of your provider selection process. Thank you. A high turnover rate does not speak well about a company unless the employees are, of course, seasonal. And dangerous people do come in all shapes, colors, sizes, and genders. We've had employers, you know, tell Cody and I, oh, but she has bows in her hair. And, I mean, yeah, but she has 3 felonies for embezzlement. And, oh, I was going to put her in charge of my stock. Well, she basically wouldn't have any stock if you hired this cute little girl with the bows in her hair. So you never know about somebody's background until you start looking into it.
Yeah, so you definitely want to approach every single applicant the same. Don't make any kind of predetermined judgments on them, their physical appearance or anything like that. I mean, obviously, if, you know, if they look like a slob or they're off the street, you wouldn't, you know, hire them, but just based on their look, approach every single person the same. You know, criminals come in all shapes and sizes, and you want to make sure that you're not discriminating against anyone. And again, going back to a background screening policy, by having a background screening policy on paper, it really despairs any kind of claim of discrimination.
Also, it's a good idea to post a sign in your interview room where people are filling out applications and you're conducting interviews that your company conducts background checks. Cody and I will tell you that we've actually, in our own company, had people come in to fill out an application, and as soon as we hand them the release and the other forms letting them know that we're going to run a background check on them, they conveniently need to run out to their car and get a pen, or they forgot something and literally don't come back.
Yeah, so you want to make sure that, and we provide signs to our clients, just stating that, you know, this company runs background checks, background screening policies, just to let both your employees know that you foster a safe workplace, as well as letting applicants know that we're going to run background checks and we're going to find out anything that, you know, you're hiding. So
so here's some more myths about some background screening checks. Obviously, people do think that blue-collar and low-level workers use illegal drugs only, and that's really not true. The reality is that even though street drugs have lost some of their luster as more professionals abuse prescription drugs like Vicodin, Darvon, Demerol, and Valium, they've become the drugs of choice among college-educated working professionals. About 75% of drug abusers are employed. They are considered functional drug addicts. And the DEA reports that 25 to 30% of drug abuse occurs in the workplace and involves prescription drugs. Other law enforcement officials report that over 30% of drug arrests involve professionals. Also, workplace violence is unpredictable. It's random. Conducting a background check can reduce potential workplace violence. I can't tell you how important it is to conduct a civil history search as well as a criminal history search. And most employers don't think about the civil history search except in light of bankruptcies, tax liens, or judgments, when in fact a civil history search will reveal if they have any restraining orders or child custody issues or domestic violence issues. Also, people think they can just do a background check themselves by going, on the internet and logging in to a company that's just, randomly selected. And don't be lured into wasting your money on these instant background check companies, because they're using databases. They will provide you with a false sense of security, because not all counties and states participate information to these databases. They are not reliable, they are not updated, and most people don't know this, but they're not, the results of a database, instant database search alone, are not permissible for making an employment decision. Cody will tell you about the name match with the instant searches.
Yes, and every day when we educate our clients, educate new prospects, educate anyone that is looking to do background checks, we deter them from running nationwide database searches. We understand that you guys are on a timeline and you want to make sure that you're getting people hired and making sure they're cleared in a timely manner. And a database search is just, a false sense of security, like Michelle had mentioned. It gives you a warm and fuzzy feeling that the person doesn't have a criminal record, when in fact it doesn't do that at all. Again, it's a name match only, so if you have a common name, you're going to get a bunch of hits back, and good luck weeding through and sifting through each one of those records to determine if it belongs to your applicant or new employee. Also, the records reported more times than not are either sex offender convictions, which are great, but more times than not, it's traffic infractions, speeding tickets, things like that. So what I tell my clients is, we'll provide a nationwide database search for you. It's something that you really can't use any of the results, and any of the results that we do get, we don't report them. We have to make sure that we go into the county that reported that case and search in that county. And like Michelle said, not every single county in the U.S., and not even states for that matter, report their cases to these databases. And if they do, it sometimes takes 2-3 months after the disposition date to get it uploaded in the database. So again, just make sure that you're doing those county level searches.
Okay. Some people think they only need, we already talked about doing the criminal background check where somebody's lived the longest in the last 7 years. Cody explained and mentioned that people tend to spend more time at work than they do at home, and may work in a different county and go out with the other employees for happy hour after work and have a DUI in the county they've worked in, and drive home to their other county, and if you only search the county that they've lived in, you won't find that DUI, unless of course you have a driving history conducted, which is also recommended. They don't need their driving report. They're not going to be driving a company car. Again, that's why we encourage you to run a driving check, even if they're not driving a company vehicle, because it will reveal substance abuse issues, DUIs, things that you may not know about if you only search the county that they lived in.
And also, it shows how responsible and accountable they are with regards to a simple speeding ticket. Everyone's going to get a speeding ticket, of course. If they don't pay on it and they need to go to court, or they have a specific due date that they're not going to, and they show a pattern of that, they're not being responsible, and it's going to be a failure to appear on a simple speeding ticket, which is going to suspend their license. So again, the only way you would figure that out is by running their driving history to see, wow, okay, they've gotten a few speeding tickets, but they haven't handled them. They haven't been responsible. They haven't paid them off. They haven't, gone before a judge. So just make sure that definitely, if they're in a driving position, run the driver's history, but keep in mind that a driver's history could show a lot more than just their driving record.
And companies small and large should do background checks. A smaller company wouldn't be able to survive if they took a hit. The money that you pay for a background check far exceeds what you would have to pay for a costly investigation. So basically, the saying goes, pay a little now or a lot later. Not all laws pertaining to background screening in all the states are the same. 24 states have enacted laws specific to background checks, and various states have privacy and civil rights laws. 12 states limit the reporting of a conviction to 7 years from the date of conviction, end of parole, or release from prison. Of those 12 states, 4 allow reporting beyond those 7 years if the subject is expected to earn more than $75,000 a year. Then you can go back 10 years. The 12 states that have the 7-year time frame are California, Colorado, Kansas, Maryland, Massachusetts, Montana, Nevada, New Hampshire, New Mexico, New York, Texas, and Washington. Let's also talk about applicants are smart, and they call us, and they are out there calling background screening companies, and they're asking background screening companies how we do what we do. And, so they have a little leverage. They oftentimes will call us and say that a company did a background check on them, and they know this because they signed a release, and they were not hired, and they don't know why. And this is very concerning because you have to notify your applicant that you're conducting a background check aside from having them sign the release. Then you have to go through the pre-adverse and the adverse action letters that Cody previously talked about in his last webinar. Temporary agencies don't always do background checks, and if they do, you want to make sure you find out who's doing the background checks. And I would encourage you to find out the results of those background checks, because temporary workers don't come worry-free, and background screening has found that up to 40% of temporary workers from certain agencies do have criminal histories. They're illegal citizens working with false identities or are otherwise undesirable. Some more facts about employment background screening. We talked about the database searches, going online. You can't make a hiring decision based on an internet-based instant criminal search. These companies that sell instant information are almost never legitimate. They're not licensed private investigators, and they can't provide you the dependability and accuracy you need to access the data that matters the most, which is accurate real-time information on your potential employee. Then again, some facts to consider when you're hiring a consumer reporting agency. A lot of employers don't want to run credit checks. They think that their employees' credit is none of their business. And if they're going to be handling money, I would encourage you to have your background screening company run a credit check. And there's a misconception that it affects the employee's FICO score, and basically a credit history search for pre-employment purposes is considered a soft inquiry and will not have any bearing on their FICO score whatsoever. In fact, we're not even allowed to provide you with a FICO score. We can provide you with the summary of their credit history. It will show all of their open accounts, closed accounts, of course, bankruptcies, tax liens, judgments, payment history, and charge-offs and other debts.
And a lot of because again, the states have their own mini FCRA, if you will, are trying to get law out there that states you can only run a credit report if it's directly reflected to the position that they're going to be having. Meaning, if it's a delivery driver, and let's say you give them a gas card, they want to make it where, you could only run his credit, and the justification be, well, I'm giving him a gas card, and I need to know how his credit is. Is he going to go ahead and run up this gas card, everything else? And so also, you want to make sure that you're doing it on, and again, this is going back to the background screening policy, that you're just doing it on those people that are going to have, even IT people that are going to have login information. That's sensitive, that's client-sensitive information. Mm-hmm. Make sure you're running, credit reports on them. It's a very, very good indicator, again, of accountability and how responsible they are.
Next slide. Conducting background checks will reduce your employee turnover, create a safer workplace, and increase productivity by reducing turnover. You also will create a safer workplace for your employees. We are all screened here in our company, and also I just want to mention real quick, you know, there are companies out there, employers that feel like, oh, you know, our employees, we're like a family. We've worked together for years. We know each other very well. We don't need to do background checks, and that's a misconception as well.
And make sure too that you know, anytime you're going to offer an employee a promotion or a pay increase, or you know, you're going to give them extra responsibility, giving them keys, alarm code, you're justified in running a background check on them. You know, because just make sure that they're not going to be, you know, they haven't committed any crimes since the last background check you've done. So, you know, even though they've been in your organization for a long time, they're a trusted employee, you know, if you're going to be giving them more responsibility, you're warranted in running and initiating another background check. Make sure this is all stated in your background screening policy.
Also, it will decrease chances that a current drug user will apply for a job, because if they know you're going to run a background check on them, that's scary enough for them. Then when you tell them you have a drug-free workplace and you're going to be drug testing them after a formal offer of employment has been made, that will weed them out right away initially, and you won't have to spend the money usually on the background check.
Right, because, you know, you're going to invest a lot of time and money in training these employees, so you want to make sure that up front you're doing a good job of screening them. And you know, we mentioned reducing turnover, reducing workplace violence. In a perfect world, we would like to eliminate those things. However, doing background checks is just a proactive approach to limiting or reducing those types of incidences. So definitely need to make sure that posting signs and making it aware to your workforce that you're running background checks.
It'll reduce your insurance claims. People that are, whether they're functional or not, that use drugs and abuse alcohol, usually call in sick on Fridays and Mondays. And so basically when you have somebody out, then you have to have somebody else pick up the slack for them, and that could create a resentment within your workplace. Their health care, their health is usually an issue, and they're the ones that have to go to the doctor so often. And so you just really taking on a lot if you don't know about these issues. It'll reduce your insurance claims. People that are, whether they're functional or not, that use drugs and abuse alcohol, usually call in sick on Fridays and Mondays. And so basically when you have somebody out, then you have to have somebody else pick up the slack for them, and that could create a resentment within your workplace. Their health care, their health is usually an issue, and they're the ones that have to go to the doctor so often. And so you just really taking on a lot if you don't know about these issues. Decreasing your legal costs and the costs of hiring and training new employees, Cody mentioned, preventing violence in the workplace. Here's some more facts. We already mentioned the temp agencies. Be careful, not all of them conduct background checks. They say they do, but but you want to make sure that you know they do. You want proof.
And, also making sure too that if you hire someone and they put on their application that they received a degree or they're just enrolled, keep in mind that if we find out that they weren't enrolled, they didn't receive that degree, that you can make an employment decision not based on the background check. You can make an employment decision based on the simple fact that they lied on their job application, and that's an integrity issue. And that's a major, major issue when it comes to hiring someone. Is, if they have something on their background, as bad as it seems, that's fine, but just let it be known. Put it out there. The applicant admitted to, let's say, a DUI. We find that DUI, fine, great, analyze it. You have the information, determine if you want to hire that someone. Keep in mind that they were honest and they were truthful. However, if we find a burglary, a larceny, and an assault charge recently, that person obviously lied on their application. Same thing for education. I mean, if you're going to be paying these people a lot of money based on their experience and their education, make sure you're running that. And if they definitely don't have it, you don't want that person a part of your organization at all.
Some other things to consider: violence in the workplace, drugs, theft, harassment. Obviously, a background check can't prevent these things from happening, but they can certainly discourage them. All it takes is one bad apple to get into your company, and they'll bring everybody down, and they'll affect everyone's job performance and the morale of other employees, especially if you have a small company. Again, high turnover would be reduced, and watch out for those falsified applications. There are companies out there that are that they will verify. You could, for a fee, you can actually contact these companies. An applicant can contact these companies and say, I would like you to verify that I worked at such and such company as a controller for 10 years and I made X amount of dollars. There are companies out there that will they're called fake job reference verification companies, and they will verify whatever you want them to.
So if you have gaps, if an employee has gaps in their employment, let's say they were unemployed, or for some reason they wanted to take an extended vacation and they didn't want the employee to know, they could choose a career path, and these companies will create a fake company, a fake human resource department phone number, and a person that will answer and verify all the information that the applicant is claiming, even though it's completely false. Also for education, you have diploma mills. There are diploma mills everywhere that for a fee you could buy a degree. And they have very, very cool and legitimate names, like, let's say Stanbridge University of Ohio. Or even internationally. Internationally, it's huge. People don't think you're going to be verifying degrees internationally. We find an exorbitant amount of diploma mills in England and in Europe. So make sure that there are companies out there like this, and the way the economy is, they're just springing up from everywhere.
Okay, we talked about negligent hiring. Drug testing can prevent accidents. Absenteeism. Okay, here's our little disclaimer now. The information provided, as discussed in this presentation, is for informational purposes only and not for the purpose of providing legal advice. As much as labor and employment law is a dynamic field, often with varying results from state to state, you should contact your attorney to obtain advice with respect to any particular issue or problem. And that concludes our presentation. We wanted to make sure that we allowed 20 minutes for questions and answers. You could type in your question in the chat box using the feature, the GoToMeeting feature, or you could email Cody and I, or you could, my email address is mcordova, mcordova at D as in diversified, R as in risk, M as in management, inc.us. Diversified Risk Management is our parent company, for those of you that don't know. Cody's email address is C, F as in Frank, A-R, Z as in zebra, A, D as in David, at drminc.us. Or you could just speak up if anyone has any questions.
And also, real quick, I want to let you guys know that we will be sending another email advertising a webinar that I'm going to be hosting in October 19th, regarding implementing a background screening policy, making sure you have a policy on paper, spelling out why you do background checks, who you do background checks on, and how those background checks are going to be used in making an employment decision. So we'll send a few emails out there requesting you to RSVP for that webinar on October 19th. And also...
Lori and Michelle?
Yes?
I have a question. This is Patty Blum. If we outsource our IT person, do we have a right to do a background check on that person since they are not our direct employees?
You could do background checks on contractors. You could do background checks on temp employees. You could do background checks on interns. As long as they're going to be representing your company, is going to be accessing your client information, is going to be meeting your clients, you have every right to do a background check on contractors. Now, some companies, you know, if they're a 1099 contractor, it doesn't fall within the FCRA, so you don't really need to have their release unless you're running their credit. If you're going to run their credit, if you're going to run a credit on anyone, you have to have their signed release. Now, if it's a contractor and you just want to do a criminal background, we require you to get a release from them just so they know a background check's being done. But know that federal law states you don't need to have a signed release for a contractor to do a background check, other than if you're running credit.
Okay. Thanks, Amanda.
Sure.
Sure.
Any other questions? And this will be uploaded on our website in about 2 weeks too. And if you have any questions after this, please email us, and we'll get right back to you with any of the answers that we have.
Also, Cody's webinar that he did on the top 10 mistakes employers make when conducting background checks is already up.
Yes, it's up on the system.
So, yeah.
And we also have a new look. Employer's Choice has a new look to their website if you want to visit the website. And again, if you guys have vendors that you're doing background checks with, just make sure that they are licensed, they are part of a trade organization.
Like the National Association for Professional Background Screeners, the NAPBS. That's the background screening companies.
Yeah, it just promotes awareness and best practice, industry standards and things like that. And make sure that, you know, your releases state exactly what you can do on the background. Make sure that your company is providing you with handouts that you're giving to the employees. Make sure that you're doing the pre-adverse and adverse action process if you decide not to hire someone based on a background report. Because again, we have, you know, applicants call us.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't do their backgrounds, but they're calling us saying, I was getting a job with XYZ company, and I haven't heard from them. And I asked them, well, when did you complete your release or sign your release? Sometimes they said they didn't have one. Other times they said, oh, about a month ago.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, well, that company didn't notify you that, you know, you didn't receive your job based on your background report. So anytime you're making a decision based on a background check, now if it's a policy violation, if they lied on their application, if it's an integrity issue, you know, you could terminate their employment. But if it's from a background check, you need to make sure that you're doing the pre-adverse and adverse action process. And for our clients, we host all of our compliance forms and releases on our platform, so they have them there at their convenience as well.
Yeah, so if you have any questions as to what forms you need to be using, please reach out. That's what we're here for.
One more thing. Could you repeat your the two email addresses, please?
Sure.
You kind of went over those fast.
Sure. Sorry about that. My email address is mcordova, so it's MCORD as in David, O, V as in Victor, A, at D as in diversified, R as in risk, M as in management, INC.US. And Cody's email address is C as in Charlie, F as in Frank, A, R as in Robert, Z as in zebra, A, D as in David, at DRMINC.US.
Thanks so much for the great information.